Welcome to everybody today. My name's Leon Cox. I'm Chief Accounts and Partnerships Officer, and it's my role and pleasure to be the host of the conversation today. But that's what we see it as a great opportunity to share insights from two of my fantastic colleagues around what we've seen across the last 12 months, looking at the contemporary governance risks through the evaluations that we work with clients on. So to commence with some introductions, I'll start with Fi Mercer. Fi is founder, CEO of GovernWith, and has been there since the beginning over the past 12 years, and is also our governance extraordinaire, with lots of experience on boards, chairing and being a director. So we can't wait to hear from you, Fi, later on in respect to what you're seeing from the insights and sharing some of the recommendations from the evaluations that we've conducted over the past 12 months. In addition to Fi, I'm also joined by Adrian Wagner. Adrian is the Chief Operations Officer, but also our data storyteller and solutions architect. And so Adrian's always got some fascinating insights to share, and sees the world in a unique way, being able to interpret data, and there's normally lots of it, to make sense for us to make some really good decisions on, and also to help plan and map our way forward. So welcome to you both, Fi and Adrian.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Leon.
Excellent.
On to the next section of today, and that's acknowledgement of country. We, the three of us, are down on the coast near Geelong, and so we acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of the land, waterways and skies. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are a part of our Greater Geelong community, and we pay respect to the Indigenous owners for all the lands of which we are meeting on today, wherever you are connecting to this webinar from. By way of agenda, we thought it'd be useful to share some insight in terms of what's planned for the conversation today. And we will work through the white paper, a little bit about the history of what it is that GovernWith provides, and share some commentary on what we're seeing from the last 12 months. We'll definitely be working through the contemporary governance risks, the big reveal, and it's fascinating to see what those are this year compared to previous years. We'll take an opportunity to have a data deep dive into those risks and share with you some of the stories that are sitting within those elements of data, and as you can appreciate, what we think opportunities are for your board or for businesses more broadly into 2025 and beyond, and some final observations. So we're really looking forward to an amazing conversation. So we're really interested to see whether or not those who are joining us today are able to predict a little into the future, or how connected our attendees are to the governance risks, to see how accurate you might be. So to do so, I'll be launching a short poll to see what your views are around what do you think the biggest contemporary governance risk was of 2024, so then we can see whether or not we've got an informed audience. So I'm launching the poll as we speak. If you could take a moment to click on which you think the top contemporary governance risk was from 2024, and that will be quite fascinating to see how accurate the audience is. I can see some of the responses starting to flow through now, and we'll wait probably another 15-20 seconds. Get your mouses working. And sorry to interrupt those who might have been having a sandwich or a cup of coffee while they tuned in today. Okay. I think we've got a pretty good response rate here. I think that that's going to be quite close. We do have one standout response. So let's wait and see. I do feel a little bit like the hot seat here and Eddie Maguire throwing to an ad break before we reveal the answer. So I'm going to end the poll there and I will share the results in a few moments' time. Okay, just bear with me while I move this out the way. Okay, so moving on to this next slide, I thought before we get to the top 6 contemporary governance risks, we might hear from Fi in the sense of what journey have GovernWith been on over the past few years to now reach our 3rd iteration of this paper. So Fi, over to you to give us that backstory, please.
Fantastic. Thank you, Leon, and a big welcome to everybody today. I think one of the most interesting things is we have been doing many reports over the years, but they've sort of been more benchmark reports. And since 2021, we've really been more focusing on our contemporary risks. So we started this particular way of focusing on our risks, and of course, with Adrian, looking at all of the data, the aggregate data from all of our clients' responses. And it was really interesting. In 2021, our top risks were around key stakeholder engagement, strategic direction. But what that really meant was it was around directors being more strategic. Continuous review and development was an interesting one, because when we burrowed down on that, what that was starting to show us as directors, we needed to be more focused on culture. We needed to be more focused on getting information about culture, about the engagement of our board, all of our workforce in culture. And so that came through in continuous review and development. We also directors identified that something they weren't assured about was their risk management and compliance in 2021. And a really big new insight for us, Leon, was the kinds of skills that directors were had the least skills in. So traditionally, we were looking for directors who had lots of skills around accounting, finance, and those sorts of things. But what we discovered in 21 was we needed directors who actually understood the business they were in. In other words, sector-specific skills. Then we moved forward, and we didn't actually not do a contemporary white paper in 22. We actually rolled 22 and 23 data in together. And it was around about then, it was the first time in 22 that we actually realised one of our top contemporary risks was environmental social governance, cyber security, and also a focus on workforce and culture. And we actually added those questions to our questionnaires, and it was actually quite incredible, because moving forward to 2024, can you believe we have exactly the same risks, but they're in a completely different order? And that fascinates me, and I'm really looking forward to talking to everyone about that today. And I guess, Leon, just in finishing, it's really important to help everybody understand, why have we written these papers? Why do we launch them at the beginning of the year, the reflection from the year before? And we want people to use them and talk about them in their boardroom. We want people to use them in their strategic planning days, to read them, to reflect on them, and help them to actually guide their practice, or just be more aware of how we're moving from the traditional risks to the more contemporary risks.
Thank you, Fi. I think it's always important as business evolves, the landscape is dynamic, and I think we could probably look at the last few months just to see what's happening on a global scale, that people need to be alive to those shifting dynamics and adjusting accordingly. So I really appreciate those insights. We're now delighted to have Adrian join the conversation. And Adrian, the next part of this presentation is actually understanding who is it that has contributed to the data set, and would you mind sharing your thoughts on what you're seeing from the source?
Yeah, so obviously we've got a nice big number there. We had over 600 directors contribute to the 2024 evaluation data set. What was really good to see was 84% of that was a follow-up evaluation, because what we've done with this 2024 white paper is we've trended the 2023 results against the 24 results. So you'll see that as we continue through this story here, how we have that difference from where we were at in 2023 to where we're at now in 2024, having that 84% of second, third, fourth plus evaluations gives us a real insight into what's actually happening with our boards. To dive a little deeper, we actually split this out by gender now. We can see that 55% of our boards are female directors and 45% male and others. It's just an interesting spread there of the gender demographics, the age distribution. We're still seeing 70% of our directors are older than 50. And when we dove further under the hood there, we actually saw in the actual answers and the results that with our traditional skills that the older director set scored really well. They had much more greater capabilities, but with the younger demographic, they seem to be a bit more switched on around the contemporary skills. There's an interesting shift there, which is great because that's showing diversity coming into the board, and hopefully we'll continue to see that shift and that spread of diversity there. Gender didn't really play a huge role in that. The distribution there between male and female and other was fairly flat and common. So it's interesting to see how our data gets affected by these different circumstances. So yeah, I think there's a lot of information that we've got here. It'd be really good to dive into the rest of it.
So let's do that. Let's continue on and have a look at where those 6 contemporary governance risks landed. And I'll come back to the poll. And so the winner of the poll was cybersecurity, sitting at nearly 40%. Next followed by ESG at 19%, and then the third being workforce and culture. So that's an interesting suggestion from the audience. Now let's have a look at where we've landed. So the listing as we saw it based on the evaluations are shown here on the screen. ESG has come in at number 1. And what we'll do for the remainder of the webinar is take you through each of these contemporary governance risks and talk you through what the data set has produced and where there are some really interesting observations and suggestions for individuals and boards to move that forward. We've got director and executive transition at 2. We've got stakeholder community engagement at 3 and cybersecurity at 4. So the polling was pretty close, although in a slightly different order. And then we've got strategic insight and workforce and culture rounding out the top 6. So let's get stuck into these risks and have some further conversations about that. If I might, Fi, could you help for the audience understand what is meant by environmental, social and governance in our context of the evaluations?
Certainly, Leon. Look, of great interest, when we did our review and development programs, being board assurance, evaluation and the skills matrix, in the 22-23 paper, there was only a couple of questions about environmental social governance, and they actually sat under risk. And so even though there was only a couple of questions, it's still rated as one of the top 6. Since then, we basically have 2 clear modules about environmental social governance, and also a module in the skills matrix. So we've recognised that this is a huge area that boards need to build awareness and grow an understanding of their roles and responsibilities. So what do we mean by environmental and social governance? Well, what the questions are about is under environmental. It's asking boards, do you actually feel assured that we have a sustainability management program in our organisation, and are we getting reports about it? Do we understand about climate change? Do we understand about the impact of climate on our assets? Do we understand about reporting? Now, of course, this year, Leon, it's become mandatory for organisations over $5 billion to be reporting. But that doesn't actually alleviate those organisations that don't have those sorts of incomes. It's still an incredibly important thing. And we're asking boards, do you understand about reporting? Do you understand about transparency required now? The social module, or the social governance area, or social sustainability, or our social policies are also really important. And we're actually asking boards directly now, do you know about those policies? Do you have those things in place? Things such as diversity, equity and inclusion policies. Do we have all of those sorts of things in place? Disability inclusion policies and so on. And what we're finding is that it's really starting to raise directors' awareness about their responsibilities, and it's really starting to make them think, gosh, am I assured? Do I really understand or know about that?
Thank you, Fi. I think there's a number of elements to this, as you've alluded to. And from the conversations that I've been having, it's not only how does the organisation convey this to their stakeholders and to their shareholders and to the outside world, but how does this translate to the internal dialogue for both existing staff members, for consumers of their services, and also to potential employees. It's effectively something that needs to be considered to then be woven through how all of those conversations are held. So I think there's quite a lot there to work through.
No, look, I agree. And I think it's an exciting time, Leon, when we're actually saying to governing bodies, these things are part of the things that you need to be assured about. And this is really triggering a lot of conversations. It's really good.
So let's now turn our eyes and mind to what did the evaluation data tell us. So Adrian, can you share with us your thoughts on how the evaluation data has come through?
Yeah, well, as our top risk, this is a really interesting one. I think it's reflecting the pressure that all of our organisations are seeing on this topic, because you can see, obviously, we look at this from a board assurance point of view, from our governance evaluation of the board, and we look at it from our director skills, our director capabilities. You can see the clear focus that our directors have had on building their skills in this area. We can see that shift from 2023 to 24 of at least getting their governance skills in place to be able to correctly know how to discuss this at a board level, how to ask the right questions, what to look for, because we can definitely see that shift being 23% up on last year, that our boards are becoming more assured that they're starting to get these processes in place. We're moving to that developing area, heading towards mature. There's been a great transition there. And obviously our individual directors are developing their skills. They're becoming more proficient. So we're getting that better map of proficiency across the board. And the conversations there must be great because it's starting to be more involved. I think we're getting a much more diverse group of experience coming into play there. I think, yeah, there's a great shift in ESG. It'll be good to see it continue that way.
I too agree. And Fi, did you have any thoughts there from the data that you're seeing in this?
Yeah, I know I agree. The thing that interests me the most is that there is a significant shift in the board's sense of assurance about what are we doing for environmental sustainability and what are we doing for social sustainability and what are our governance processes around that. But I don't think that there's a very big shift in the director capabilities. And what that speaks to me is there's still more opportunities for recruitment, still more opportunities for thinking about this in our succession plans and what have you. And I suspect, Adrian, that one of the reasons why there is such a big shift in directors' assurance is because if there's over 80% of our directors who this is their second or more year of doing this evaluation, what they're saying is they've obviously addressed it when they realised it was a gap the first time, and they're probably getting lots of things like management bringing to them what we're doing within the organisation. Most boards are quite surprised by the incredible work that management and others are doing around this area. But I think we can still do a lot more about the actual director capability piece.
I think there is an evolution in the sense of what's available in the market now by way of director development and education. I think it's in essence an opportunity for people and individual directors to reflect on how do they see the importance of this this approach, this philosophy moving forward, and where to should they be looking to continue to enhance their understanding and knowledge around it because of the shifting expectations, whether it be, like we've mentioned, stakeholders, but also access to capital and the financing piece too, in making sure businesses can provide that level of comfort to those providing finances. So there's a number of different dimensions here. I have seen that there's been a little bit of activity in the chat box and also in the Q&A. I think moving forward, if there's any questions, happy for people to pop them in the chat box, and we'll look to pick up any themes from there as we move forward. So we've spoken there a little bit about the data. What should boards continue to be doing here, and what should directors be doing? I think we've touched on some of these, Fi, but is there anything there that you want to focus in on, particularly at the board level?
I think probably the biggest shift that I've seen is to actually start to see ESG as not just one of those things that we have to add to our list. It's actually a really good umbrella under which to work. And a really good example of what I'm talking about is I've had over Christmas and more recently, I've been doing a lot of research into what are we doing in other parts of the globe around governance. So, for example, in the UK, they have the new governance code. And one of the really impressive things that they talk about in that is actually the notion that just being financially sustainable is not going to cut it anymore as far as being successful as an organisation. You need to think about financial sustainability, environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and being carbon neutral. So, Leon, what I think that means is that I'm seeing that environmental and social governance is the new umbrella under which, or the new principles under which you should do most things. We should acknowledge it in our strategy. We should think about it in our succession planning and recruitment, and importantly in our policies and procedures. And a really, really important thing is that we need to probably focus a lot on the social side of that agenda. And I know, Leon, you've had quite a lot of discussions with people around this, like probably the environmental sustainability agenda is moving along quite well, but it's that social agenda, because it really does address some of the workforce problems.
Yeah, look, I think just to pick up a little on that thread, when speaking to organisations about how they might work through this, it does depend on the complexity, the size, the type of business they are, the sector that they're in. But one opportunity that I would be suggesting that boards and organisations think about is, how does their strategy in effect incorporate each of these elements or these pillars? And some businesses have reached a point now where this is the starting point under which their strategy is then now further developed and informed. And so thinking through how each of the strategic initiatives that they're looking to pursue fits in with either the E, the S, or the G is a great way to have some more of those deeper and in-depth conversations. Because at the end of the day, if the directors who are people, if the executives who are people, if the employees who are people don't understand and don't embrace and engage in those conversations, then you're not getting the performance and the optimal output that you're seeking as an organisation, and generating the business opportunities that you should be looking to do, or delivering the services that you're being charged to offer. Then why are you looking to make those pursuits? And so that's really where we're seeing organisations changing that narrative to look at how each of those initiatives support the ESG aspiration that they're working towards, because it just makes more sense for the people that are there who are looking to deliver execute the plans.
I think it's really good, Leon, and I think probably finally it is about training, or what I prefer to call insight sessions, because I think that raising everybody's agreed understanding of what environmental social governance means is a good thing. There's a whole lot of rhetoric around it. There's a whole lot of misinformation about it. And I think if you can have a good conversation, good insight session, and get a shared view of it, that really helps as well.
Fantastic. There are now other risks that we should probably move on to, and we do have a limited amount of time. I think that like I've mentioned, there's a bit of conversation happening in the chat, so feel free to ask any questions in there. I think I can see some in the Q&A session, so we might look to answer some of those as we work our way through some of the other elements. Okay. Contemporary risk number 2, director and executive transition. Fi, do you want to give us an overview of what is meant?
Yes, certainly. So again, what this risk relates to is the combination of quite a few things that we look at with our review and development program. And we ask both in the board assurance questionnaire, we ask both the executive and the directors who do the questionnaires, how do you think that induction programs are going? We ask about different elements that relate to successful transition. So transition, Leon, is made up of quite a lot of parts. It's made up of good succession planning. It's made up of good recruitment. It's made up of good induction. It's made up of good engagement processes, both with the board and with the executive. And then we also look at, in our skills matrix, how did everyone feel about how their induction went? And 9 times out of 10, directors are coming back and saying it just wasn't adequate. There wasn't enough. And so why is this a risk? When you combine all that data, it highlights to us that we're still not managing a lot of these processes as well as we thought we were. Or 9 times out of 10, Leon, we're managing 1 or 2 parts of it well, but not the whole transition cycle. So that's why this one is actually much higher up the scale than it used to be as a risk.
Sorry, my mouse has gone in the wrong direction. Let's go forward to Adrian to get your thoughts on the evaluation data.
Yeah, so this one, as Fi just sort of said, from a board assurance point of view, we cover a lot of aspects there. We talk about that succession planning, we talk about transition, we talk about induction. So there is that slight increase there in assurance around how boards are feeling about what they're doing in that realm. What's, I hate to use the word disappointing, but slightly unassuring is that they're still seeing from the director's capability perspective, where here we're looking solely at induction, bring new directors onto the board. And we haven't seen that much of a shift. It's only a slight shift up on last year of board directors. Still 47% of board directors feeling they either weren't inducted or they haven't been inducted as well as they hoped. So there's still a disconnect there in bringing board members into the board and correctly introducing them, which slightly reflected in the board assurance around their whole process of where their whole transition process lies. It's an interesting one.
And Adrian, I guess what I wanted to add to this as well, to support you in the discussion about data, is that when it comes to director capabilities, we're also noticing that with the executive, if you're thinking, Leon, about our number 1 top risk, which is environmental and social governance and all of those social policies, and the importance of our leadership teams and our governing teams to look like or to actually reflect the diversity of the communities that they serve. What we're discovering is you might see a shift now in boards and their recruitment and looking for more diversity around the boardroom table, but they're overlooking the importance of that very same thing at the executive level. And in order for workforces to be engaged, they need to look up and recognise that diversity. And that's another part of this transition that's not as successful at the moment, and why it's a top risk.
I think it poses a real challenge, Fi, when speaking to boards in this space, in looking to get the composition right, and not only from a what we might view as a traditional skill set of the professional or business skills, but to now broaden those horizons to incorporate some of these elements, and having more people who have HR or social qualifications is a newer area for boards to contend with, in addition to some of those ESG skill sets. And then you also need to factor in that there are at sometimes limited number of board positions that you've got to work with, and you've got the rotation periods to then factor in as well. So there's a number of moving pieces there to work on. But I think what we are suggesting here is that greater emphasis needs to go on understanding how our directors are currently brought into that environment, and then conversations are held to develop them up and to have the understanding that they need for that board in the sector that they're operating in is vitally important. And we are seeing more people with cyber skills coming on, and we are seeing some more people with climate and sustainability skills coming on, but are they at a point of being productive and aligned to understanding what the business is looking to do and needs? That's where this, I think, data is suggesting that we need to continue to work on. Great. So what can they do? Fi, back to you here to talk a little about what you think this section here on recommendations or opportunities can cover.
I think one of the biggest things for me is when it comes to director and executive transition, understand that just focusing on one of those key components isn't enough. That you actually, even though it's going to take longer and it's harder work, you actually need to focus on all of those key elements of successful transition. And I'll just remind you, they are succession, they are that succession, that good succession leading to good recruitment, good induction, and good ongoing engagement policies, processes. And another part of transition that's really important and probably overlooked is a good execution from the board, a good transition off the board. You know, keep that tenure going, keep those skills going, keep things rotating and moving on. And I guess another thing that we just simply don't take enough note of is our subcommittees and the importance around the succession plans and the recruitment plans around them as well. I think that's really important. So I would urge people on boards and governing bodies, get together with the executive, do this stuff together and actually deliberately make it reflective of all of those key 5 areas of transition. And last but not least, Leon, it's incredibly important that directors actually consciously participate in the transition cycle themselves. You can't just get on a board and sit back and think, well, it's their fault. They haven't inducted me properly. They haven't done this. They haven't done that. You know what? It's up to you as well. Particularly, if you really have put your hand up and you really do mean it, a lot of this transition cycle being successful actually sits with you as well.
Thanks, and we should probably keep moving because there's a few more risks to get through. But I think in that space, being proactive to speak to your fellow directors and your chair and seeking information, being inquisitive and curious, it's a useful trait in a variety of different areas. Stakeholder and community engagement. Fi, can you share with us what does that mean in our world?
Yes, this is extraordinary. You know, ever since we've been doing review and development here at GovernWith, stakeholder engagement has been literally, up until 2 years ago, the top risk. And it's absolutely incredible. And Leon, it's nothing to do with the skills of the directors on the board. Of course, now it's broadened to community engagement because it's so incredibly important to be engaged with our communities. But stakeholder engagement is basically around, do we have processes in place that our stakeholders can influence our strategies, our services, what we do? And do we have things in place where we communicate then back to our stakeholders what our strategies are and how we want them to be engaged? So, and there's significant planning required around that and identifying who our stakeholders are. And Leon, if you look at how our contemporary risks have changed over the last 5 years, so too should our stakeholders change. And so these questions are all about, do you have those things in place? How assured are you as a director and as an executive that they're in place? And more importantly, what are your actual skills that you bring to the table around this?
Thank you. Adrian, your thought?
Well, I think this is a really interesting one because we introduced last year the concept of the bystander effect. And I feel what we start to see here is we see that real acknowledgement that they feel assured that this is happening on the board. But when we start looking at those skill levels, we start seeing, 45% of the board sitting lower, developed proficient or lower, that means that they're sort of relying on those few members of the board that have the skills in these areas to start, taking their assurance that that's right. And there maybe isn't enough of the education there, the governance skills to actually ask the questions required or look into a topic or just feel comfortable to bring your opinion to the board. So I think we start to see a little discrepancy here. And this is something that's, it's an area where there's too many people that don't know what they should know or running along those lines.
And I think for me, that director capabilities chart on the right, the number or percentage that was proficient, I would say that accounts for a big number of directors, and that's gone down a little on last year. So that, although there's been a slight uptick in developing advanced, I think that section there in the middle would indicate that some directors and newer directors don't quite have the knowledge or expertise that boards might be looking for.
We're missing that essential skills.
And keeping in mind what we talk to boards about a lot of the time, the effective practice score is really up at 90% that we should be aiming for. So there's some big gaps here that we're hopeful the business community and the boards might be listening to. So what can the boards do? Fi, over to you.
Actually, it's very interesting because we just had a question about why are the director and executive transitions grouped together, given that induction is so different, and also do those who answer the survey actually say what parts of induction they don't get? And I guess that actually helps in answering that. It helps answer this as well. So just quickly, director and executive transition are together because whether the executives do the questionnaire or whether the directors do, they all speak to the all of those elements of transition not occurring as well. So we put them together because the two groups could actually help each other. And induction is actually something that the directors and the executive do say what's missing in their questions. So we can follow up with you about that. But stakeholder and community engagement is really, as I say, it's a mystery to me why this continues to be something that we don't do. And perhaps it's because we just get so busy with all of the other key things on our agenda, on the executive's agenda and on the board's agenda. We've got strategy, we've got risk, we've got everything else under the sun. And maybe we have continually, Leon, abdicated as a board to the executive and think it's their role, it's their job. But I guess what are the opportunities and what are contemporary boards doing? They're actually looking deliberately each year, given how contemporary risks are changing, who are our stakeholders, how do we engage with them better, what is the plan around that, and how do the executive and the board work together better to achieve it or deliver it. And really, really importantly, is there a subcommittee that can be responsible for this to, help us? And last but not least, don't just report in events or number of events, but actually report in outcomes, how it all went.
It's critical here to be asking the right questions. Otherwise, the insights that you're getting are not going to be helping you make better decisions. So that's the simplistic view for me. On to the next, cybersecurity. I think most people have a handle on what cybersecurity is. So maybe we just go to the data, get Adrian and talk us through that.
So obviously a topic close to my heart. as it always is. And interestingly, the only one of our risks that actually dropped, which I find is really interesting and in itself, that this dropped a small amount on 2023, still only came in at number 4. But I think what that reflects, in 2023, we talked a lot about the abdication of this particular topic to the executives, the tech experts in the room. And I think we're seeing a shift in developing skills. We're seeing a shift here where directors are just asking some of the basic questions, and it's leading to that decline in assurance, which just means they're being a bit more switched on about it and they're a bit more concerned about it. So I think it's a really interesting one. Obviously, skills will continue to grow. Directors will still continue to learn that we can ask these basic questions of these people and expect them to answer them for us. And hopefully it will increase next year, but it's good that it's actually decreased this year. I'm glad to see it has.
Yep. Some more cyber security directors joining boards, more education, more development. I think this is really heartening for me to see that there's a positive shift that is occurring in the market, and hopefully we can continue to see that increase.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Adrian. Fi, some thoughts here?
Well, I love working with Adrian on this one because I love Adrian's response to this always. He says it's not a technical problem, Fi, it's a person problem. And I think, Adrian, the best message that we can pass out, isn't it, is so I'd love you to actually bring this one home.
Well, it is. It's the weakest link in any technology system of the humans involved.
Yeah, it's true.
It is. So, yeah, having these things as regular board meeting agenda items, and having a subcommittee that's looking after this area, but being able to, like we've got listed here, implementation of secure IT systems and those director executive transitions. But that's again about us understanding the topics that need to be covered. There's some really good education. There's some really good books on this as well. That's an interesting topic to cover off. We could go on for hours.
I know. And I think probably just finally, I think the most important thing that I've probably learned over the last little while, and I think that data indicates, don't abdicate responsibility for this. You've got to force yourself to learn a bit about it.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, even if it's rote learning, you've got to learn something so that you ask the right questions.
And I think on reflection, a lot of our other risks could use this.
Yeah.
Use that same sort of thing.
Yeah, I would agree.
Thank you. On to the next strategic insight.
Yeah. Look, this just relates to everything else. Basically, strategic insight is about taking time on your board agenda to talk about strategic things. We all run into the trap of being bogged down and, falling into the burden of compliance, falling into the trap of being bogged down by trying to be assured with the operational things. As a director, it is absolutely your responsibility to be strategic. And what we've learned is that the more you actually deliberately agenda time to be strategic and learn about more things, learn about trends and issues, even if you just start with your organization's top risks and you're learning them today. So you need to spend time at the boardroom, and we ask this question deliberately, are you doing that? And it's what intrigues me is, and you'll learn this in the data in a minute with Adrian, directors are saying, yes, we do this. We do a lot of it. But then we're discovering directors' capabilities around some of these areas aren't as high as they could be. And perhaps we're not talking in our strategic insights about the right things. We might be talking about traditional risks as opposed to contemporary risks.
And the data here, Adrian?
No, I totally agree that the data is sort of supporting this, that it's kind of flat. There's a slight increase there. There's a slight shift in skills and what people learn, but it's ever evolving landscape, the whole board governance area, this shift into more contemporary skills now, looking at ESG, looking at cyber. It's a constantly changing landscape. And I think being strategic and forward thinking in that area, that's what we're seeing here, is that, yes, we're trying to keep up and we're just managing to sort of stay in the same place. So as long as we're staying at least in the same place, that's something. There's always room to improve, but it's not tracking backwards.
But I think the data shows we're assured as a director that we're doing it, but
Yeah.
are we talking about the right things? That's my question.
Yeah.
And there's scope for improvement there, and the director capabilities piece would suggest that too, with the bulk of the directors sitting in the middle, where we'd normally like to see a few higher pillars up on the right in the advanced space. And I think here in strategy, it's important to have both a short and long-term discussion. I think there are still boards out there that wait for their strategy discussion for that once a year piece, when they get together for a morning or a day. And then in between times, there's a lot of conversations that are missed because it's waiting for July next year, for example.
Yes, so I think we've sort of covered our opportunities. It's about those, it's about deliberately agendaing time, but more importantly, and that's why we want people to use these contemporary risk white papers, make it about your contemporary top risks, and actually don't think, oh, good, I'm here as a director, I've made it. Dare yourself to be learning something you haven't learnt before or being challenged. Leon, I heard a fabulous thing the other day, that the true definition of listening is actually changing your mind on something you firmly believe in. And I would challenge all of you as directors in a strategic insight way to do that. We meet lots of directors who sometimes say to us that some of the contemporary things that we're now expected to learn are annoying or, just trendy. But in actual fact, I dare you to learn about them, because I think we all can always change our mind, and that proves we listened.
Very, very salient point. So workforce and culture. Do you want to give a brief intro to this one?
Well, I think and I've been reading the comments as we've been going, and I think Julie made a fabulous comment. She said, I could have chosen all the top risks. And I think, Julie, to your point, this top risk is a part of everything. So workforce and culture, this asks about, this data covers a lot of areas, and it basically refers to the fact that from a contemporary perspective, there is a hell of a lot more than just one culture that we need to think about in relation to workforce engagement. A long time ago, Leon, I thought, it's just about quality and safety. But guess what? People are passing accreditation with flying colours, and everybody's practicing quality and safety. But those very same people are treating each other like garbage. So this is where we come back to the very beginning of our conversation today, which is the social agenda. It's about people dealing with people and how they treat each other. And it's profound, and it's a whole new area to learn about. I was actually a little surprised that it was number 6. I was thinking it would tap up there close to number 1. And everybody's agreeing with me in the comments here. It is the foundation stone of our organisation. So even though it's number 6, I would strongly like to suggest that if you were to take nothing out of today, that you look at ESG and this and genuinely discover how these two things sit hand in hand together.
Yeah, I think the big reminder here is the board is responsible for culture, the tone at the top, and it would be remiss of me not to use the the secondary phrase and the mumble in the middle, which tends to be a whole mix of other subcultures and people just doing what they think they need to be successful. It's really important to take ownership of this to make sure that you have a good understanding of culture and the different ways to get some insights into that. Adrian, some this on?
Well, this, I think, just exposes that problem and shows, yes, it's our number 6 risk. It's the highest rated one out of all the 6, but I think it is right up there with ESG. And obviously part of ESG, they go hand in hand, because you're seeing here that the board is feeling quite assured. We've got a really high maturity score there. But when you look at the director skills of this, we're seeing that familiar pattern of very few directors with those advanced skills, a good bulk of proficiency, and a lot of unsure directors. So those unsure directors are abdicating and just basically taking on whatever the loudest voice in the room is saying, or whatever executive is saying is happening. So there's a definite concern there in what this is representing. It needs work. That's the best way I can say it.
Yeah. And Leon, that there is no better place than to kind of finish where we started, and that is to I cannot bring this home enough. The board and the executive must lead together in harmony on the social agenda. Try to stop thinking about culture as just quality and safety. Think about it as a social agenda. These are humans that we're working with, humans that we're providing services for, and humans who we share our community with. So what is our social agenda? And from that will fall some of the solutions. One of the things I guess I have seen a lot of over the last year is wherever we work, we become focused on some of the legislation and what have you. But what we're finding is half of those things are supported and solved by focusing on a social agenda. Top tips for 25.
Yeah, I think that was a nice segue, Fi, in terms of what you were really looking to emphasize. I think we're looking at that real commitment to understanding how well are the governance mechanisms working at the moment. Do we have the pieces in place that allow us to be assured that what is happening either in the business or coming up through to the board level is providing us the detail that we need, the certainty, the assurance that we're meeting our obligations, whether they be legislative or whether they be societal or whether they be for our internal stakeholders too. So I think that really just ties in neatly to the elements that you were touching on before, and in particular that social pillar number 2.
Exactly. No, I think these top tips are really clear. I think you have to be committed to an annual process of review and development. You cannot just make it every 3 years, because just look at this. In the last 3 years, the emergence of completely different contemporary risks. So you have to be on top of it. I'd focus on that social sustainability aspect and really work hard on the succession and the induction, or all of those 5 elements of transition. And
so I think that, we're running very close to time here, Fi. So I'm just getting through the next couple of pieces around what's next in case we lose a few who drop off. And in the sense of what's next, you'll get sent a link to our white paper, a copy of these slides and a recording of this session to really help with implementing some of the recommendations and actions that we have suggested. And also for those who aren't aware in terms of what we do, our governance review and skills matrix evaluations are listed here. And also we offer through our network of facilitators and advisors a number of different options there depending on where you're at. And don't forget our partnership with Convene. in the board portal, convening Teams board portal solution, as well as an ESG element of capturing management reporting and feeding that up to the board. I know that there have been a few questions in the chat. We've attempted to answer those as we work through. Is there any final remarks, Fi or Adrian, that you'd like to share?
I guess my quick final remark is, and I'm just looking at some of these fabulous comments, and it's asking about some of those big boards that we can see great. They are posting all about themselves. They're saying we're fantastic, and yet they're falling apart. The businesses are falling apart at the seams. I guess my tip there is try to not have such subjective processes around your review and development. Try and have some real rigor and some real credibility behind the way you do measure yourself. I think the staff that we work with call that hypocrisy. So let's make a really big stand on not being hypocritical, and let's try to do things in a genuine and earnest way.
Yep, my comment on that, let's get some external independent advice to make sure you're not drinking your own Kool-Aid.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Terrific. Thanks, Leon. Thank you, Adrian. And thank you so much to all the amazing people who've come today. What a great session.
Thank you all, and we wish you all an amazing rest of the day, and we'll send you a recording link as well as the associated papers. All the best.